This is Jeff here at FarmWorks and Trimble Training. Today's class will be working through the surface module, some of the advanced features within that surface module. We'll talk a little bit about setting up the pipe sizing and some of those kind of things. Talk about some of the other features and things that you can enter in when you're working with those pipe supplies. We'll go through the process of setting up and selecting multiple lines and assigning data to multiple lines at the same time. We'll talk about the connect tool, how we can go through and use the connect tool to connect two lines that for whatever reason may not be connecting to themselves the way that they should. We'll talk a little bit about the pipe sizing tool. We'll talk a little bit about how to verify designs and those kind of things as well. We'll mention briefly some of the other tools and things that have been added that are also available that you can use when you're designing and setting up your drainage design. If we have some time, if there's interest there at the end, we'll talk a little bit about the levee tool as well and how that levee tool can be used in those type scenarios where you do need to set up a levee type system. At the very end, we'll spend some time talking about a couple of different reports that are available, how we can go through and use those reports to order materials, use those reports for potential billing and those kind of things. So that's kind of a game plan of where we're headed with the class today. We'll always leave time at the end for questions, so we'll definitely do that today as well. The project that I'm working with is a project that's got a little bit of data in it. Some of it's completed data, some of it's some planned data. This actually did come out of an older version of Surface, so when we brought it into this version, it actually went through a conversion process, and we would have done that in the class on last Wednesday. As we were going through the basic features of the Surface program. One thing that we want to do before we start using the multi-line tool, the pipe sizing tool and some of those kind of features, is we want to do a little talking here about our different supplies that we've got. You'll see here in our Inputs tab, under Supplies, we've got a category for pipe. And then under Pipe, we've got all of our different size pipes that we've got entered into the program. If this is an older version, one of the things you are going to want to do is you're going to want to come through and go back to the properties of each of the different supplies. So if we start with our 4-inch corrugated, for example, and we go to the properties of that, when we bring that up, we have our description line there, obviously. There's a type drop-down list here as well. And that type drop-down list is where we're going to select the actual best fit for the properties of that pipe that we're working with. The reason that we do that is this is what the program has all of the drainage calculations tied to it. So as it's going through and figuring how much water we need to get rid of, how much water each of the different tile sizes can get rid of, those are all tied to the individual tile sizes that are set up here. So we've got corrugated single wall, we've got corrugated dual wall, and we've got concrete. If what you're installing doesn't quite hit one of these, do the best you can to match those up to get you as close to the desired results as we can. If there is a requirement or a request for additional items other than what we have here, you can always submit those to farmworks.com and we can pass those on to the development team, so as they're working towards future updates that we can get those selected there. The other items that are on this screen are more for the planning type aspect of the program. If we enter in how we purchase the tile, so if we purchase this tile by the roll, I'm not sure on price, so we'll just put in $400 per roll, and we'll say there's 6,000 feet on a roll. And then the minimum length is the minimum length of that size tile that you want to install. And so maybe if it's 15 feet or 20 feet or whatever it might be, or 50 feet or whatever your minimum you would ever want to install of that type, that size tile, you can put that in there. What that will do is as the program's starting to figure out multiple tile sizes and those kind of things, it'll look at that minimum length requirement. So especially as you get to your larger tiles, if you're putting in a 12-inch tile and you want to use at minimum one section or one length of that, you can put in a 20-foot minimum there, and then the program will, if it's going to require less than that, it'll actually jump it up a size or quicker, so that it hits those minimum requirements that you've got set. And the other thing that we're going to set here in the supply properties is we're going to set the color of that tile. By setting the color here, we only have to do it one time. So every layer that we look at, in this case, your 4-inch corrugated tile is going to be yellow. If we go to our 5-inch corrugated, you see in this case we've got it set as purple. And again, I'm going to go ahead and set it as a roll, and we'll put the same price, and we'll say there's 5,000 feet on a roll here, and we'll set a 20-foot minimum there. I'm just going to continue on down through each one of these, and we'll go to roll here, and we'll put the same amount. And we'll just put some distance in there. And we'll continue on down through each one of these, going through and adjusting the properties here so that they meet the requirements of what we have and the actual properties that we have. And we've got our colors set up there as well. And we get to our larger tile here. We start buying those in 20-foot sections. So 50 cents a foot on those. And our minimum, we'll say, is 10. We've got a color is gray there for those. That's fine. If you need to add more, all you need to do is right-click on your pipe category. You'll be able to go in and add a pipe size. So maybe we want to go ahead and we want to add 12-inch corrugated here. Oops, we'll do each here again. And we'll choose a different color. Let's choose this brown color. So just that easily we can add in additional pipe sizes as you need to go along there. If we get to the point where we need larger pipe sizes than what it shows here, the program will use the largest pipe size you have available, but it will give you a warning and let you know that a larger pipe size is really needed in order to complete that job. So there we've got that done. Once we've got our pipe supplies, then we're ready to go ahead and go back and start to look at a field here. So we're going to go ahead and go to field 1 here under the Steiner place, and we'll bring up our topography. And we'll go ahead and switch over to our topographic view to kind of smooth that out. Basically what we've got here is we've got a homestead here with a drive and a little bit of yard there that comes out to the road. And we'll go ahead and we'll bring up our drainage plan for this field. So this is the drainage plan that they had designed for this field. You see that the field, the lines that we've got there, we got a few lines that have a few issues, some lines that may not be connected to other lines and those kind of things. So we're going to spend some time here talking about how to set up the properties so that we can use the auto pipe sizing features. First one of the things I want to do is underneath our tools. You'll see with the new Surface module that you have a lateral spacing calculator that you can use. Once we get into the lateral spacing calculator, you need to enter in your drainage coefficient, whether that's 3/8 or 1/2 or 5/8, depending upon what that drainage coefficient you need to use for that type soil, the type of area that you're in, and those kind of things. Those drainage coefficients should be pretty straightforward there. We'll go ahead and choose our tile diameter at 4-inch. Our optimal tile depth there at 3 feet. What our restrictive layer depth is. So if we've got an average restrictive layer depth in this field of 9 feet, we'll go ahead and enter that in. Our water table depth, basically where we want to keep our water table, what our minimum depth for that should be, and then our KSAT value. KSAT value, again, should be able to pull that out of your drainage calculation information there, whether that's 5 foot a day, or if it's 7 foot a day, or 6 foot a day, or 3 foot a day, or whatever it might be there. Let's go ahead and we'll change that to 4.5 foot there on that end of things. Once we've got our values entered in there, we can hit our calculate button. So it's going to tell us that we should have with the parameters that we've entered in, we should have a spacing, our lateral spacing should be around 36 feet as our minimum spacing requirement. Now that being said, in this field, we're going to go ahead and we'll set it at 40 feet. So we'll be real close to that 36 feet. If our K-set value is a little bit different, it might throw out a little different number there. So you can see our K-set value just changing it from 4.5 to 5, changes that lateral spacing requirement from 35 to 39 feet. So we do have that. That is actually one that's built in. A lot of guys have had different types of spacing calculators for over the years. We went ahead and found a pretty standard one that we went ahead and put into the program, so you didn't have to go to that website, or you didn't have to get that manual, calculation and do those manual calculations to come up with that lateral spacing calculator. As we drew this out, we actually did draw it in at 40 feet on our spacing, but we do need to also go in and tell the program that those are set at 40 foot. So if I go ahead and rubber band, left click and drag a rectangle around all of the lines, see they all start to flash there. And we can come in and fill in our drainage width at 40 feet. Once we've got that drainage filled in at 40 feet, we can scroll to the bottom and click on our update button. The program's going to go through and update all of our lines. So now if we check any one of those lines that we are at 40 feet on that. So we can do that same thing if we want to do phases. If we've got certain phases of the project, maybe this phase up here on the north end, we want that to be phase 1. We can go through and hold down our control key, go through and select multiple lines there. So if we want to set that up and say maybe that top north part there is phase 2, you can go in and enter that all as phase 2. And now if we right click and invert the selection, that'll invert and reselect everything else. And we can select that all as phase 1. Actually, we've got a third system over here on this far side. I'm actually going to come in here and deselect some of these lines basically by holding down the control key. I can go in and deselect some of those lines. So now we've got this main part here on the bottom part of the screen. We'll go ahead and call that as phase 1. We'll update that information. And now we'll get this the system over here on the far side of the screen. And we're going to call that phase 3. So now we've got our different phases set up. I do believe I got these all set. Nope, I missed this top part here of getting it set as phase 2. I forgot to update those. So yeah, if you make those changes, you do have to update those. So now if we switch our map here, we can see our phase 1, phase 2. We've got a couple here that still didn't get defined, so we'll go ahead and we'll go back through and redefine those as phase 3 and update that map. So now we've got some existing tile that was here around the house, and actually this main, as we select this main, that was actually an existing tile as well, so we'll go ahead and change it back to phase 0 and update that. So now we've got our existing main that we have and a tile there around the house that are phase 0. And then we've got our main phase here, our main drain system here as phase 1. We've got our phase 2, and then we've got that small system there on the east side that we're going to need to set up and run off to a different outlet. So we've got it set as phase 3. So that's how we can use the multiple select. We can select multiple items and assign properties to those all at the same time. Now the other thing we're going to need to do, part of the reason we're getting some of these exclamation points is that these are actually not connected. So if I select that line, you see it kind of goes over the top of the main. So there is a way to connect those lines or force that connection. We can, if we do a right click on a line and choose connect to, and you just need to select the line that you want to select that to, and now you'll see that it shortened that line and went ahead and made that connection for us. And if we've got these 3 lines here. Again, if we right click and choose connect to, and then select the main, connect to, select the main. This one we've got to be a little bit more careful there. We make sure we select it and then we connect it to the main itself. That should shorten that line up so it makes that connection. And the other thing we need to do is I want to actually shorten this line just a little bit. So I'm going to come in here and use my cut tool and finish and pick up that end of that new sub-main that we laid in for the main part of this system. So I did shorten it, but I do need to make sure we get it connected to the main. So I'm going to go ahead and select that sub-main, connect to, and connect it to the main there. So now it's going to connect into that main. So as we start to do our drainage calculations, that's going to be able to pull all of that information together to make sure that we can get rid of all of the water on all of the different systems there. So I'm going to go in here and verify a couple of these and see what we might have happening here as far as our system. Saying we can't achieve the maximum depth. And we're going to change that offset down to 0.25. Update that, so we're okay on that line now. Now we're missing, these two were actually some existing tile lines, so we just need to set some parameters on those. Set to 3, 3.5, 5.5, and offset at 0.25. Now we can update it. Just need to do the same thing here. And update that one as well. Okay, now both of those lines are going to flow and hit our system there. And these 3 lines, we can do these all 3 at the same time. So we'll go to 3, 3.5, 5.5 as our minimums. 0.25, 100 foot, 0.1, and update those lines as well. Those tile lines there now all fit within our parameters as well. From there, once we've got our connections, we've made all of our connections now, so our lines all connect. We're ready to go ahead and we'll choose our verify design. Okay, we verified all of our lines should flow with the slopes and everything that we've got set in. Now we're ready to go ahead. I want to go ahead and hit our save button there so it remembers all of those changes. And then the next step I want to use is our auto pipe sizing. Once we hit our auto pipe size, it is going to bring up our drainage coefficient again. We will have to select that drainage coefficient. We can tell it what size pipes we want to have available for use within this project. So if you can pick and choose from the list, you can select them all. It does have a checkbox there to verify the drainage widths, just to make sure all of our lines have got that drainage width entered in. Once we hit our calculate size button, just that quickly the program's going to go through and set up and enter in our sizes for us. It tells us whether we need a 4-inch or 6-inch. If it's a multiple size, multiple pipe sizes, we can click our view button. The program will show us how much of it is going to set up at 4-inch or at 8-inch in this case, then how much is at 4-inch. We can go in and make some changes on those lines. Once we get out of this screen, we can go in and edit those lines. So in this case, we want to just change it to 500 feet of 8-inch, and then the balance being 4-inch. We can go in and make that adjustment once we've saved and updated the line information here. Same thing on this pipe here. It goes from 4-inch to 5-inch on up to 6-inch. And then we've got one more pipe down here that's got some 4-inch and 5-inch both needed on it. Once we click our update button and we click our close button, now if we make sure we're on our pipe size here, now you can see the program has went through and we've assigned the pipe sizing. You can see the line here along the north side is where we went from 4-inch to 5-inch to 6-inch. The main pipe that runs down through the center here is the one that goes from 4-inch to 5-inch to 6-inch on up to 8-inch as it's working its way on out as well. We can do one of two things to select the different lines. We can go in and choose an L8, which is that line that had the multiple sizes on it. We can come in here and adjust that. So if we want to go ahead and adjust that to 500 feet, and we'll need to put the balance then here on the, make that change here as well, make it 1244.39 to come up to our 400 feet then. We'll save those changes. You can do the same thing on this other line here that's got multiple sizes. If we want to come in and adjust that, we can come in and adjust the footages there as well. Totally up to you on if you want to make those changes. We'll go ahead and select the top one here. There you you can see that we're going from, and maybe we want to cut this back to 300 feet of go to 300 feet of 5-inch, and then we'll make the balance a 4-inch. So now we can save those changes, make just a little bit of an adjustment there on that where it switched from 4-inch to 5-inch. That's kind of how we use the pipe sizing tool. It's actually very straightforward. I'll make sure we hit our save and close button. And now we've got an actual design that is ready to be sent back out to do the actual install work with all of the pipe sizes on it. We've got our existing lines. We've got our new lines that we're going to be installing there. We've got them marked out in phases. All of those things have been done now on the desktop software. From there, we can actually, let's go ahead and we'll talk about the reports here real quick. So if we go to reports, all report, and then under field drainage, and we can do a planned drainage report. Go in and select our field. So we'll go in and select George Steiner Home Field 1. And once we click preview, now it's going to bring up our supplies that we're going to need it for this field. It's going to tell us we need 4-inch, 5-inch, 6-inch, and 8-inch. It's going to tell us how many rolls based off of our properties that we set up, and then how many feet of each one of those total feet that we're going to need then based off of the design that we have. It's got our average cost per foot in there and those kind of things. It also tells us the number of adapters that we need. The adapters here are going to be your T's or your Y's. So we're going to need 40 4-inch to 4-inch connectors, 11, 12, 13, 2, and 2. And then we're going to need 4 inline connectors, estimated number at least based off of the information that we've got there, we've had entered in on our links. So again, that drainage planned report can be a good tool that you can use to estimate cost for supplies, and then you can go from there as far as estimating your labor and those kind of things if you're needing to give an estimate for a job before it's done. That's the drainage planned report that we have. The other thing that we have is a drainage completed report that we can look at. So if we've got a job that's been done, I'm going to switch fields here. Let's go into all right, and we'll just click OK there. So if we've got a plant or completed drainage map that we've brought in, again, we can go in and edit that map if need be. If we need to go in and change, or if we need to make any adjustments to the map, we can certainly do that. If we don't, if we just want to look at a completed drainage report, we can go to all reports again under field drainage. We've got a completed drainage report. If I go under Ted Lichty, field 1, now we can preview that report as well. It's going to tell us how many feet were actually used, or how many, in this case, how many rolls were actually used based off of our price that we've got entered in. Again, this is actually off of the completed map that was done during the install. So that's where it's going to pick up that additional information there for that type of a report. We'll go ahead and we'll bring up one other field here. We'll talk a little bit about some of the other features that we've got there. We've got some extend and some clipping there as well. So we can talk about how to extend lines out to field boundaries, those kind of things. We'll go ahead and bring up our topography here on this field. I can right-click on the topographic layer and choose the refresh. And now we've refreshed that surface data. And now when we smooth that data out, it's going to go ahead and smooth out that topography data for us to get us a better idea of what's happening within that field. If we bring up a drainage plan that we've got, there's a plan that we went in and we just drew some lines on it there. At the time that we drew these, we forgot to switch tools, and we drew all of these in as outlets. So maybe we want to go ahead and switch drew all of those in as mains. And maybe we want to go ahead and switch those all over to laterals. I'll come in here. Again, I'm just using my control key. While I'm holding that control key down, I'm deselecting items. I'm reselecting some of the others. If I go into our edit mode here, so now I can switch this over to a lateral. Yes, and then this one actually is a sub-main. Go ahead and put that in as a sub-main. And we'll call this one, those will be laterals around us just fine. And now we definitely do need to clip these off. See, these lines actually should just be clipped and connected to this border tile. I'll go ahead and select those lines. And now we're going to actually get a couple more along here. And now we're going to extend those to a section line. Which is going to be that section. Oops. So once we've chosen that extend to option, and then we choose section, we click the line that we want to extend that to, and it does bring those back and clips those off. Get zoomed in here a little closer, you'll actually see that a little better. We're going to choose the extend to section. We'll choose that border tile that we put in. Tortoise was unable to do that, so we'll try again here. Extend to section and clip it there. Same thing with this line. We need to get that sub main connected to the lateral there. These is a lot of times it's better to do these one at a time. So we need to extend that to. This one's been a little more stubborn there. I think it's because this line is not connected to that line. I'm actually going to cut this line off. Now that I've made that cut, I can delete that line, and now we can actually see that those two lines aren't connected. So I'm going to use that and connect those two lines. We've actually got them overlapping here. Now I think we can get them to connect. Yeah, we've got. I think they had multiple section lines here when they did this other design, so that's what's given us a few issues here. There we go. So now we've got lines are starting to connect for us a little bit. Again, we can continue that, just kind of cleaning up these lines a little bit, just to make sure that everything's connected the way we really want it to be. Let's delete that line out of there. Looks like we got 2 lines there. There we go. We'll connect that line to the top. So now let's get these lines here connected. Oops. We'll try to connect multiple lines this time. Extend to section. We did all of those there at one shot. So basically we can go through and use that extend tool to extend those out to make sure they are connected the way we want, where we want those connected and those kind of things. So now let's see if I can connect these 2 border tiles. Try it the other way. Not wanting me to connect that corner up very well there. I'll extend this line out just a little bit more. And now let's see what we can do. There, now we got it connected. We can come in here and cut off the excess. So now we can, again, go through and do the same thing over again there. Make sure we've got everything all set as far as our parameters and everything. If we look at our line here, we've got some incomplete data at the very end. Part of that is because of the fact we ran out of, we didn't get enough data points close to the edge of the field. So that's basically what we would be looking at there. But that extend to and connect to, maybe a better way to demonstrate that is if I go in here and let's go in here and just delete off all of the lines here. And maybe the first line we want to run is the lateral tool. Well, let's run it up here at an angle. And we'll create our offsets off of that. Didn't connect those. Let's delete off those lines again then. I see our problem. Let's connect this. Let's extend this line out. Too close to the edge of the field here. All right, now we got a line that we can work with. Let's work off of it. And we'll create offset. We'll go 40 feet. Let's do 7 more. You see how those have all gone by the edge of the field. Now this is probably a little bit better example of when we would want to use that extend a field boundary. If we right click, choose the extend to and choose boundary, See how it snaps those all back inside of the field boundary for us. Another option we could have used there would just be our cut tool. So if we've got a straight boundary like we've got here, we can use that cut tool to go through and cut those tail ends off. And then we can rubber band around all those tail ends and delete those all at one time. So that would be another option, a couple different options on how we can kind of tidy up a map as we're working with it there. If we've got a line that's got an error on it and we really can't see what's going on, we can hit this hide errors and warnings, and that gets rid of that big error message so you can see that profile a little better. You can see what's happening with that line a little easier and figure out what adjustments you might need to make to that design, or whether that line's just not going to work at all and you need to restart and redraw a line maybe in a different direction, something along those lines. I think most of the errors we're getting here is just because we need to, we don't have our outlet depth set for this main here, or this border lateral, whatever you want to call it there. So let's update that to 5.25 feet and put our maximum depth at 5.5 feet. And now we can update all of our laterals. I think the minimum depth on those was wrong, 5 feet. Now let's see what we're looking at. Update our optimal depth. There we go. Now we've got it updated enough. We need to turn that warning back on. You see the end of our line here. Basically, we're close to the edge again. We don't have those line items there where we can see what's happening. Again, in that layer, once we had everything done, we could use the auto pipe sizing. Select all of our items. Our calculated size. Didn't have our drainage width figure entered in there. We'll say no. The program does a pretty good job of letting you know when there's an issue. We'll select all of our sizes. Wish there was a select all there. We've added that one as a request. If there is an error, you can click on that. Basically, it tells us there's an error basically due to invalid design parameters. We can still do our update button there. And I'll just go ahead and assign all of our pipe sizes with the exception of those two lines that have got error messages on it. And it didn't pick those up because of the errors that it has there. Again, basically the fact that we don't have enough elevation data at the end of those lines. I think both of those lines are going to have the same issue, exactly the same issue there. So we can come in and cut that line off a little bit, and that'll fix the issue that we're having with it. That one we can go ahead and just assign it as 4-inch. We still can go in and just manually assign sizes there if need be. So we still have all of the same old features that we had, but we've added several new ones there. I guess is kind of the big key. So I think we'll go ahead and wrap up today's class. I do want to thank each one of you for attending the class today.